Hey everybody, welcome to Chronicle Cast. This is Andrew Bowcock. I am here interviewing the band Lightsystem. So I would like each of you guys to introduce yourselves briefly.
This is Jason Greenlee. I play bass.
This is Danny Byrne. I play guitar, I sing, and I play a little bit of keys too.
Hello, John Kyle here. I play drums.
This is Matt Johnson. I play synth.
Alrighty, perfect. So, anyways, I recently discovered you guys. You guys were playing with my friend's band Noctua, and they told me to come out to the shows. It was really random, and then I looked up your guys' Facebook, saw you had a new album coming out, and if anybody's following the site, they probably saw my little review that I posted this past week. But anyways, I was really interested in interviewing you guys because it's kind of rare nowadays that I get really kind of excited by something kind of new in music and something that I feel that I haven't quite experienced before. So that's kind of in a nutshell what what you guys did for me, I would say, in a live experience and on your album. So why don't we talk about your origins real quick? Like if each of you can kind of go over just a brief background, maybe starting with Danny, just like where you're from, what drew you to music, and kind of like eventually what led you to the band. I saw, Danny, you, I think I saw somewhere you went to Berklee School of Music, is that right?
Yeah, I went to Berkeley from 2002 to 2006. But before that, I lived in Rhode Island for a little while, and I lived in Washington, D.C. for most of my life. Started playing guitar when I was about 10, and just haven't really stopped. I kind of got more into producing more kind of electronic music for a little while there, and I was kind of infused with more rockish stuff, and that just kind of led me to what we're doing right now.
Cool. So I guess Jason, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I've been in LA for about 2 years. Before that, I grew up in Minnesota. Started playing bass when I was 7th grade, 8th grade, something like that. Started off playing like a lot of heavy, hardcore stuff. I was in a hardcore band, and about 2 years ago, I moved out here and found these guys on the awesome Craigslist website. And it was kind of my intro to kind of this type of music, you know? And it's, I don't know, I really like it, so.
Awesome, yeah. I've noticed it's kind of like a journey sometimes, the idea of moving yourself out of whatever genre you're comfortable with and then kind of like discovering something new and then that becoming almost a part of your identity. I've noticed that even though my identity hasn't completely changed from when I was younger, I've kind of noticed that for myself too, that over the years you get something that develops in you and then something that draws you into it. So definitely get what you're saying there. So how about John? Why don't you go next?
Well, I grew up in Northeast Pennsylvania. I was started off around 6th grade, big into like the grunge music thing. Silverchair was like my idol, and I was playing guitar and singing with friends, playing battle of the bands and stuff like that. And then when I was 19, I made my way out to Seattle. I have to say, like, that was a pretty pivotal moment in my life as far as like the style of music, you know, that I was listening to. It kind of meeting the right people and making friends. When I lived up there for a couple of years, from about 19 to 21, I was introduced to primarily a lot of like hip hop and electronic music, and just generally a whole other world outside of this grunge scene that I was really into. And then I kind of also fell into like the jam band scene of things. And strangely enough, moving out to Seattle, I moved out there to like do the whole guitar player singing thing and, you know, go to school. I was going to school for audio production. I didn't know anything about it, but I just wanted to, you know, move away from home, that whole thing. And my first roommate was a bass player, and he found out I kind of messed around with drums a little bit. And so we ended up jamming one night, and then over the span of like a year and a half, I ended up playing drums all the time because I was the only person amongst my friends who played drums. So it was kind of a necessity. And then I met a friend who was going to school that I went to school with up there, who was going to a new school down here in Los Angeles, and he told me about this great drum program. And I got interested. Came down to Los Angeles when I was 21. I'm 29 now, so it was about 8 years ago. And went to school for drums, and shortly after I got out of school, I met Danny here via Craigslist. And it was an experience for me, definitely jumping into a new style of music, but also I had this roots background as far as a musician in the grunge, you know, scheme of things that really has still been with me despite all the funk, hip hop, Latin, everything else I can get my hands on. Something that stayed with me and really kind of developed a foundation for how I approach the drums for Lightsystem's music. I can't, really express it enough that over the years that I've been playing, the more I definitely feel musicians, the more you focus on exploring other genres of music that don't really have anything to do with the style of music that you're playing per se with your band. In my case, Lightsystem. When you focus on those other genres and concepts, it translates over to your actual band's music in ways you wouldn't even really imagine. Even to this day, when I'm getting behind my drum kit by myself, I'm definitely messing around with all sorts of different stuff like reggae and South American music and stuff. But again, it all comes back to really what I play with my band Lightsystem. It definitely all kind of interconnects. So
yeah. Yeah, that totally makes sense now that you're mentioning all of those genre influences and whatnot, because hearing you play drums, I wouldn't necessarily listen in and go like, oh, this is Latin, this is the Latin style, this is like a hip-hop type thing, specifically listening to your band. But now that you're kind of talking about this juxtaposition sort of that naturally happens, I've noticed that as well. I mean, like even me, like as somebody who aspires to be a filmmaker, a lot of the filmmakers I like and follow in a similar vein have this huge range of influence, like people you would never really relate them to, but they have such a wide kind of span to draw from that it becomes sort of an unconscious influence. You get to the opportunity to almost pick and choose your influences kind of more on the fly, and I feel like that can really help somebody's art overall. It's really interesting.
Absolutely, yeah. It definitely gives a musician the opportunity to create a different spark within the particular genre that they may fall under,
Yeah, absolutely.
It makes it a lot harder to repeat yourself.
Yeah, always looking for something fresh, and not wanting to. Because another thing now that you bring that up is, back thinking to certain drummers I would listen to, certain musicians just in general actually, and I would say, okay, this person is a metal drummer, this person is a punk rock drummer, this person is a whatever it is. But generally the best musicians I know are the ones you can't tack down to a single genre anyway. They have this kind of flow that doesn't limit them, and I think that's kind of the important thing there.
Absolutely.
Anyways, I saw in most of your guys' promo pics and stuff, there's only 3 of you. So which one of you is the newest one?
Maddie here.
Matt, okay, cool. Because I was going to say, I was like 3, but I know there's 4 of you, so I was just checking in on that. So I see Craigslist as kind of this uniting factor, this theme I'm noticing here. So do you guys want to elaborate a little bit more on how that actually happened?
Yeah, totally.
You can. Yeah.
I actually came out here from North Jersey.
This is Matt, by the way.
Yeah, this is Matt. I found these guys on Craigslist, and I came out to California kind of seeking opportunity in music, and Craigslist never fails, I guess, and I found these guys, and they kind of took me under their wing, and it's like a great project, and I'm really happy to be here, making music with these guys.
And the Craigslist thing is just kind of like almost comes out of necessity too, because there's not
the situation you deal. I'm sorry, I don't want to interject, but the situation you deal with, particularly in Los Angeles, it's a double-edged sword as far as being a band or forming a band, because of a couple different reasons. First of all, it's a major city that's really saturated with 1,000 bazillion great bands. You could go to a bar on a Tuesday night, and there's absolutely nobody there. It's you and the bartender, and you're watching the most amazing band you've ever seen in your entire life play for nobody,
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, because I went to one of those shows the other night. Just, some more friends of mine, and I'm like, man, these are really talented musicians, and I am here with one other person in the audience. Like, that blows my mind. That's pretty insane.
All the time.
Yeah. Also, the thing is, where Craigslist came into the and just it's almost just like putting an ad up at your local record store before the internet was around. And I just moved to LA, and I wanted to be in a band / maybe form a band, and I didn't fucking know anybody. Yeah. Jason came, and it was the same deal. Matt came, and it was the same deal. And John was here before all of us, and he was looking to put a band together too. And you just go online and you search. I think I searched Mogwai or something, and John, his ad came up, and we had a short email exchange, and kind of sent some examples of shit we've been involved in, and we're like, okay, you're cool, we can meet up. And then meeting up led to bringing our instruments into a room and playing together.
And then the thing was from there it was like years of like different people going in and out the door, and honestly, like the honest to God truth is, good musicians are a dime a dozen, but finding someone who's a good person and will show up is another thing. So
Yeah.
you really consider the release of this album like the beginning of us, and everything else prior to was kind of a building the foundation thing. You know, there's a sense you get when you get the right people in the picture that like you really feel like this is, you know, what works for what you're trying to do. And it was a really arduous, long process of years of trying to get that, you know, because it's one of those things in life that you can't just do yourself. You're at the mercy of other people. You know, if you want to play in a band, you're at the mercy of those other people in order to do what you're trying to do. So, you know, the whole Craigslist thing finally brought us to where we're at now. And it definitely it kind of feels like the start, even though it's been years in the making, you know?
Again, any type of collaborative art can have the most amazing, talented people, but if you don't have that communication and that kind of mutual commitment, it's kind of like all for moot. I've gone through that much myself. It's frustrating. So I'd like to just briefly ask you guys about your biggest inspirations. So first of all, your musical inspirations, like within music, what inspires you most, and then non-musical. So what outside of it, whether it's an artist, sculptor, film, sports team, I don't know, whatever influences you. So go for it.
Jason, want to take one first?
The stuff that inspires me is stuff that's kind of like weird, oddball stuff. Like I'll listen to hip hop, but if there's something weird that's like, I can listen to normal hip hop or like any type of genre, regular genre, but if there's just something weird that just kind of stands out, that's usually something that catches my ear, and that's something that inspires me pretty well. I mean, even if there's not like heavy bass or anything in it, it's just kind of interesting sounding stuff. A lot of hip hop and electronica stuff definitely kind of inspires me a little bit, as well as like the heavy stuff, which was what inspired me in the first place. That's what I came out here to do. It was to play in a heavy band, and I found these guys. So it's like heavy.
Awesome. It's a perfect kind of balance or compromise, I guess you could say, of the heavy and the abstract, maybe. I don't know. As far as outside of the music realm, is there anything specifically you're drawn to?
I really like photography, and I don't know how that inspires me, but it does somehow. I can definitely tell that it inspires me some way. I'm really big into photography right now. Definitely inspiring.
How about Matt?
Musical influences, I grew up kind of listening to heavier stuff, metal, and I really got into progressive rock, like the prog giants like King Crimson and Yes, and that just kind of opened doors for me, like to seeing what these people could actually like come up with, and that really changed my life. And I got really heavy into electronica actually, and that's pretty much what I'm into.
Right on. Outside of music, though, is there anything else that you're really interested in or you feel inspires you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I went to school for art. Art in general inspires me, particularly visionary art. I really just love the way people are able to express what they're trying to express in different mediums. Totally open doors for me. Like,
are there any like specific artists that stick out to you majorly?
I love Alex Gray and what he's doing. The whole kind of psychedelic art, I guess you would say, and. To me, like it's hard to kind of like put any artist above any other artist.
Yeah.
Whatever they're expressing is coming from, what they've been through in their lives and their own soul, really. So I'm open to anything, and Alex Gray definitely changed my life for sure.
Danny, what about you?
Musical influences, I would probably start out with like Soundgarden and like Nirvana and shit, all the grunge stuff. And then I got really into like heavy metal and like middle school, and throughout high school I was just like listening to tons of like death metal, and like I don't really take too much stylistically wise or influence wise from that like at this point in my life, but I know that having played that kind of stuff and having like sat down and learned that kind of shit was good for my guitar chops, I guess. But I mean, at this point I'd say my influences, if I could list them off, would be like David Gilmour from Pink Floyd, Buzz from the Melvins, and Bjork, Nine Inch Nails, Porcupine Tree, Neurosis a lot.
Nice, yeah.
And
Swans.
Not really Swan. Trying to interject influences in me.
Ocean Cast.
Like Brian Eno.
I did notice some of the, like, especially when you mentioned David Gilmour, I did notice because there is something about the tone of your album that reminds me of Dark Side of the Moon. Like, I don't know, I don't know if that's intentional or not, but yeah, I definitely kind of feel a little bit of that in there, whether or not it was meant to be.
That's fucking great, man.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, obviously, I guess anyone could consider it a compliment, but just whether or not it's meant to be that, it just kind of rung in my ears like that a little bit. So, anyways,
I ripped him off a little bit.
yeah. Oh well, I didn't notice any rip-offs, so that's a good thing. Definitely. John, what about you?
As far as my musical influences, like I mentioned earlier, my younger years, pretty much all the way up to about 19 years old, was grunge rock. To the 10th degree. And then the following couple of years, my musical taste expanded, and I got into a lot of electronic music and really into the jam band scene. I'm a big Fish fan, and there's a band called Disco Biscuits. The drummer from that band, Alan Hawken, Medeski, Martin and Wood, Billy Martin from that. That's definitely the drum world and music scene that kind of altered my taste in my later teens. And then when I moved down to LA, I was, I guess I can probably speak for all of us that we have a pretty dang broad range of music that we like to listen to. But as far as the drumming world, gospel music was something that was introduced to me that I wasn't really, growing up in Pennsylvania, wasn't really aware of the fact that, churches had full-on bands and, there was like rotating, bass players and guitar players and drummers. And
Yeah.
some of these kids playing these instruments, that are putting up YouTube videos that have 50 views on them and you'll never hear of them, are honest to God, the best musicians in the world currently. Gospel music in general. I mean, to be honest, I'm not a huge fan necessarily of something like shout music or the actual music itself, but the musicians playing it, particularly the drummers and their styles, or lack of a style, I should say. Gospel musicians pretty much can nail any style you put in front of them. And that whole world turned my world upside down as far as being a musician and a drummer over the last, I'd say, 10 years. And as far as what I've been listening to, though, recreationally, the funny thing is that I don't really listen to a lot of drumming music. I mean, as I've gotten older, I've gotten really into like soundscape music and soundtracks and film scores and everything in between. Half the stuff doesn't even have percussion outside of orchestral percussion, but it's just what I'm drawn to. I don't know why. I definitely have my influential drummers and stuff, but recreationally, I listen to a lot of non-drumming music.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would say, actually, because I feel like once you saturate yourself enough in that, I do know some people who need a break from that. This friend of mine I know who's a really great cinematographer, for instance. It's like he's influenced by all of these great like filmmakers and whatnot, but then he goes home and watches How I Met Your Mother for 5 hours, just something really
absolutely.
basic.
It's a different, totally. That's like a form of release that you can't receive or can't execute via your actual art and stuff like that. Honestly, one of my biggest musical influences my entire life is probably Rob Crow from Pinback. There's certain musicians, I'm sure, like you could probably agree with. There's certain musicians that like it seems like every single move they make, whether it's from one measure to another in a song or a whole album that they're a part of or a side project they do, every single thing they touch, like if you were good at what they were good at, you would do it exactly the way they're doing it. Like say the first time you're listening to a song, this is the first time you heard this song, and this next part's coming up, and you can already tell what's going to happen, and then they do it, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But he's a massive influence of mine. I'd have to say. I'd probably be pretty nervous if I ever met him.
I
want to meet you.
We'll be your backing band.
As it goes with any idols for us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Basically, I just wanted to ask just real quick about your guys' album just a little bit. It seems like, you've kind of constructed it to be like there's this continuous flow to it. And I don't know if that's intentionally just a stylistic choice of your music, or did you guys actually intend this to be like a full-on concept album, or does the album just kind of flow like this kind of front to back type of thing? Was that intentional, or was that just kind of the way the music naturally came out?
I think that it's more of that's how it naturally came out. It's kind of a tough question to answer.
It became intentional after that.
Yeah, it came kind of like, okay, I'm kind of starting to write a concept album now. I might as well finish it.
Yeah.
But it took a while. It took a while for it to come to that point. I mean, it was a long process making this record, and
I would say like since the beginning, it's something that just came about very organically. There's certain parts of certain songs that came from piecing jam sessions together. Like we would literally take, like, say Danny would bring in a concept, and then we had this other part because we record everything we do, every rehearsal, everything, and it's a big part of our writing process is reference listening. And we literally figure out like, all right, let's take this thing we wrote and this other thing we got, and let's play them next to each other, figure out how to get into one and just see what happens. And if it sounds good, other songs will come about like kind of written in a shorter period of time, but over time it kind of just built up to be this, to where all of a sudden we stepped back and we realized, yeah, it is kind of a concept album. And I think then we took a further step, correct me if I'm wrong, to actually kind of nurture it in that direction that it was already going into, which was a concept album. Which is funny you ask, because we're very conscious that that's kind of what it ended up being, and we're happy about, but it also inspires us to take steps as far as our next recording to like maybe give ourselves some guidelines and try to totally stray away from something like a concept album and do something totally different, you know?
Okay, that's fascinating. Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about your future plans and whether or not you're kind of continuing in that direction. So are you saying that basically, I mean, from what you're telling me, it seems like you kind of had, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe a few based songs and maybe like there seemed to be a flow between them or something you kind of just built around in order to build the entire shape of what turned out to be the album? Is that kind of like what came about? You just...
it came about like wanting it to be like that, but it not being like that. And then kind of shaping the beginnings and ends of the songs to fit right, and like we weren't really exactly sure what the order of the songs should be, and I was in the process of writing lyrics. The drums had already been tracked, like we tracked the drums first, and then I kind of like demoed musical ideas on top of it for a while and like just wrote lyrics. I think there was like a fucking period of 2 months where I just sat at home and mostly wrote lyrics and like tried to figure out what guitar tones would work, just like with plugins. And then once I figured that out, I actually went into a room and got some recording gear together and got out of work at night and went and you know, recorded guitar and vocal ideas for a few more months. Then I was mixing and overdubbing for a while, and by the end of it, I had a fucking concept record. That is Lost Language, and like,
nice.
Yeah.
So it's almost like almost kind of like divinely structured in a in a grand scheme of things.
Yeah, it's kind of like,
yeah,
it's kind of hard to force it, you know, and
yeah.
I think for the next one, I would rather not do it like that. And write some songs in a different way that I've been wanting to do, writing more sporadically and not taking 10 months to make a record. and taking a year before that to write a record, and like exploring more of our, you know, we have a lot of electronics on stage, and that's another aspect of the sound that we'd like to explore. And also want to have like visuals live, and then there's a whole question like, do we write the music first, or do we write the music to the visuals, and like how fucking crazy can we go with this? Like that's
So yeah, I mean, obviously, like you guys seem to kind of be just trying to organically push through it and just kind of see, you know, where you can take it. But the thing that struck me most about this album is just kind of, I think I said in my review, kind of how like naturally structured it felt, like just very tight and solid, but at the same time there seemed to be kind of like this almost spontaneity to it that that felt very kind of natural, like nothing was forced. It seemed like, you know, just from my recollection, that it, like just listening to the album, certain parts sound simple, but I think I mull it over in my head, and the way it you know, rushes over me when I listen to it, I'm like, man, this had to be like really planned out, like really well, in order to actually achieve this. Unless there are some big happy accidents there, I don't know.
Nothing about it was planned out.
Okay.
It kind of was just like, does this emptiness work before this part, or does this minimalism of this part work? How, like, if it doesn't work, what's the minimum amount of stuff I need to add to it to make it work? And other than that, it's just trying to figure out, it's just track order. And then there's like lyrical, obviously it's a concept record, and the lyrics kind of follow that. And does it make sense to have this song like this? Okay, this song, these sound like kind of like the beginning of whatever the story is. And
yeah,
these other songs kind of sound like the middle, and then there's a conclusion. And do the songs, the way they fit together, the way they're structured throughout the album, does it keep that cohesiveness? Do we lose a listener? How does it all work out? And I think a lot of it came together in the overdub process, and yeah, that's why it came out to be that way, I think. And I'm glad I'm not working on it still.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay, so basically, the main thing here was you didn't necessarily intend for this to be a concept album, or I'm sorry, I was a little confused. Did you initially mean for it to be a concept album and it turned out to be the other way, or was it vice versa there?
We initially didn't know. Like, I kind of, I mean, the thing that makes it a concept album is usually the lyrics. And, like, I had a good amount of lyrics for a lot of the stuff when we started recording, but a lot of it came along. Okay. And it's kind of like, okay, I kind of have a thing going. I kind of have it's all mental imagery, you know? And
yeah.
And how do you manifest that musically and lyrical and vocal wise? And
yeah, that makes sense for sure. Okay, so finally, like, before I kind of like move into the final part of this, I just wanted to see, what's the inspiration? How did you guys kind of get your band name, and like what inspired that, and what kind of like inspired also how you came up with Lost Language as the name of the album and everything?
As far as the band name, I think Dave Grohl, at his keynote speech he gave at South by Southwest this past year, would probably put it best. I think he said something along the lines of, the one thing people still don't understand is one of the hardest things about being in a band is picking a band name. The biggest thing, you know, I mean, at least what we were obsessed about was trying not to pigeonhole ourselves. Being a creator of your own music, you have no idea what it really sounds like to the ears that are listening to it, and you never will. And we had tossed around some names and stuff like that, and Lightsystem basically came about from tossing names back and forth, and we were most comfortable with it. Basically hated it the least, and it grew upon us over time, but we're most comfortable with it because it kind of comes from the approach of, like, say, like a binary code 010001, where there's nothing to it. It kind of steers away from describing the music as rock music or anything. You know, I guess if I was to hear the band name prior to hearing the music, I wouldn't really quite know what it would sound like, and that's kind of, you know, a good area to be in as far as when you're forced to pick a band name. I mean, I think most bands probably wouldn't even have a band name if they didn't have to have one. But unfortunately, you do. And as far as the album name, lyrics, and stuff like that, Danny, you want to take that one?
I think Jason.
Well, from what I get from it, it's like it's a story of the glossolalia, speaking in tongues. You know, it's a language that no one understands, and I think it just Lost Language makes sense for the whole concept of all the lyrics, you know?
You're just saying much that don't make sense.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. No, I'm trying to recite it the way that you explained it at some point. I mean, I don't really know why I'm explaining it, to be honest.
To me, like to go back to the band name, we had originally had a few other band names that we were starting out with before we even like played a real show, and I don't know how Lightsystem came up, but we were like, okay, that's kind of cool. Let's just fucking go with it, you know?
Yeah.
And like, we didn't really give it too much thought. Like, we just kind of put it into Photoshop and made some cool designs out of it or something. I don't know, and we thought it sounded cool. But to me, like, it could be anything, you know? Like, when I think about it now, it could be the sun. It could be like...
That's what I got from it.
Like, it could be like quantum mechanics. Like, you know, it could be anything. It could be you and me. It could be humanity.
Yeah.
In the entire scheme of things, like, what is a light system? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why we picked it.
There you go.
Make it cool on a t-shirt, and, you know, it rolls off the tongue easy. And
yeah, no, it's ambiguous. It kind of represents kind of the aura. I would say, like, I think it justly satisfies the feeling you kind of get from the music. I mean, I really like it. I was just kind of interested in your perspective on it. I mean, I gotta say, like, for me personally, when I get to, especially in the rhythm of listening to a certain type of music or a certain band over and over, it seems like eventually you get so kind of used to something, even if you try to expand your taste or whatever, you get used to things that you like. And then eventually there's kind of like a void, like there's a void in my psyche kind of that desires like a therapeutic artistic outlet. It's like something, sometimes it's hard to identify what that is, but I gotta say, like, you guys kind of like satisfied that in like a huge way. I don't know, like, feeling your music. It just seems like there's the electronic side, there's like this sci-fi element, you know, I'm huge into sci-fi, and then there's this ambiguous structure to it that kind of like keeps it interesting, and there's a certain tone and mood that just kind of like really resonating, and I feel like really just evens out a solid sound. So yeah, I mean, I'm just like, yeah, I'm just really excited you guys got this going, and I think there's a lot of cool things in the future for you if you kind of keep on that track. I just wanted to go for it
for a while. And thank you, and it's been a long time coming. I mean, like I started playing music with John in 2008, and we've been through a lot. We've played a lot of shows. We've had a lot of different members coming through. It's kind of been like a revolving door of musicians.
It's been a lot of growth since the beginning.
Yeah, and like I feel like when Jason joined the band, it was like 2.5 years ago now, or something like that. And we were playing for a while, and we started actually making progress writing this album, because like before this we had an EP that was like 3 songs, and we had a single song that we did. And like when people are revolving through your band, like it's hard to write new shit. And having a solid lineup of people who share a similar vision as you, and who show up to practice and enjoy being at practice and working on this music, that's what makes a band. And I wouldn't want to be in a band that's not like that. And you still want to know about the lyrics.
You don't have to explain it. I mean, the art should explain itself. I'm a firm believer of that. But I mean, if there's anything you want to say, I just wanted to give you guys a chance. If there's anything before we wrap up here that I may have missed or anything.
Well, I mean, we've been talking about how it's a concept album all night. So.
Yeah.
I think, like, to me, it came together as kind of a exploration of like an image. In my mind, it's a bunch of still frames and a bunch of like scenes, and they're not necessarily connected second by second, but like it's kind of a exploration of the ways in which maybe two people, or like two people that are in some sort of relationship, doesn't have to be a romantic relationship or anything, but the way those two people connect, and when that relationship ends, like how the severance happens, like how the people and the people you are close to, how do they influence you, and how it's like when you know somebody so well, you kind of develop your own language with that person. And not that I've had many situations where I've lost friends over anything like that, but it's a concept record, so I'm kind of exploring what that would be like, and goes from 2 down to 1, and it's like through all of the senses, and I don't really know how to explain it.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense, though, now that you're touching on, the idea of just thinking of some of the elements from the record of using kind of, I don't know if this is me reading too much into it, but the idea of taking the lyrics from the parts that I'm recalling in my mind, and then seeing, like, even noticing the huge instrumental parts between that, and how there's kind of like almost like a breakdown between the attempts at communication. Not necessarily in a negative way, but that's just kind of like the impression I was getting from some of that too. But obviously, I think in a scenario like this where you kind of beautifully crafted this kind of like oral piece of art, it kind of like everybody can kind of bring their own thing to it, and I think that kind of contributes to the idea of lost language. When I think about it, so.
Yeah.
But yeah. So on some ending notes for our listeners, just so you guys are aware, as of right now at least, the full album is still streaming on your site, right?
Yeah, it's on our Bandcamp page, which I believe it's lightsystem.bandcamp.com.
Just go to lightsystem.us.
Yeah, and you can go straight to lightsystem.us, and we've got shit up for sale. We've got the record up for sale. We've got a few t-shirts and swag. For the kids.
There you go. And it's on iTunes, so I say go on iTunes, support the band. What is it, like $10 probably to just download it on there?
It was on iTunes, I don't know, but
I would on there $10.
Like I'd say if you have an iTunes account, it's easy for you to go for it.
Yeah.
But we don't like corporate devils, and
Okay, so order it through you guys then.
Bandcamp is the best way to go, and
Therefore,
if you want, you can order it off of us and the
Come to a
physical
show.
copy, and come to a show and help us out that way. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I remember I was a little irritated too because I bought mine on iTunes for like $10, and I go to your show and you have all the cool fold-out art and everything, and it was $8, and I'm like, oh man, you know.
To a
But-
show, it's worth it.
Yeah. No, yeah, it's more than worth it. Just go to the show, see it, buy the album, or, however you can get a hold of it. Listen to the album, love it, and then buy it. That's what I say.
No, just listen to it. Just,
It will be on vinyl too.
Oh, amazing. That's awesome.
We're working on that. We're a pretty DIY band, so that will come. But
Perfect.
we were going on tour, so we needed CDs, and vinyl's a little bit more pricey to produce, but is cooler and looks cooler and will
Sounds
be cooler
better.
and sounds a little different and is cooler.
Yeah.
It makes you more hip.
Yeah, it's the more hipster thing, I guess. So if you're going that way, yeah. But no, do you guys have any more tours coming up in the near future?
No tours planned for now. I think we're going to try to do like kind of a southwest into Texas, maybe a little eastward later this winter. But
Okay.
I think next big tour will probably be sometime next year. And until then, you could probably catch us around Los Angeles, or maybe we'll shoot over to Phoenix or up to San Francisco or up into the Central Valley and play some shows up there.
Alrighty. Okay, well, I think that's it. So I appreciate it. This is really great to interview you guys and get some insight onto this. Huge fan of the album, and I think you guys are going to have a really strong following if you keep at it. I mean, this is one of my favorite releases of the year so far, at least. So
thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
definitely appreciate it. So thanks, Danny, Jason, Matt, and John. And be sure to check out Lightsystem on their website. And check out our page too, and we'll hopefully keep you guys updated if they have any more releases in the near future. So once again, thank you guys, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Thank you.
Peace.